Hello, BookTube. I have a couple of magazines I want to go through with you. Not just to go straight to the book section and pick it apart, but also to make a slightly larger point, which I will get to. The first one is Entertainment Weekly, which we've seen on this channel before. This one has looks like an angry young man with a cherry in his mouth that says "Suck it, Negan." I have no idea who he is. I have no idea why anyone would voluntarily put a cherry in their mouth, and I have no idea what that sentence means. So I just went right straight in to the issue. When you're going through here, one of the first things that you encounter is a full-page color ad for the assassination of Gianni Versace. This new, very nice ad, I think. This new show that's coming out on FX. Starring, among other people, Darren Criss as the man who killed Versace. And it's, when you're seeing this thing, and you're seeing that there's going to be a full blitz of publicity for it, interviews and whatnot, probably one of those annoying, unavoidable teaser trailers on YouTube every time you open YouTube. And what the point I want to make before we even get to the book section of Entertainment Weekly is that this is based on a book. This is based on a book called Vulgar Favors by, I think, Lauren Orff. I'll put the note down below. It's a really good book. Just thoroughly entertaining in a dark kind of way, in a disturbing kind of way, and also it digs below the surface. If you're writing about a gay loner who went on a gay killing spree and then killed a gay icon, you don't need to dig below the surface. So if your author does, that's really good. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. So you've got the first full-page ad here, and it's the adaptation of a book. But then we move on. We've got they did a Q&A with the creators of the assassination of Gianni Versace, and then they do every week they do a must list, and the must list this time around includes a book, Red Clocks, by Lena Zumas, and the blurb they have here is, this provocative novel, written in the spirit of Margaret Atwood, follows 5 women who must navigate a near-future America in which abortion has again been outlawed and in vitro fertilization is banned. It's a fascinating read for a current moment in history. And that, unlike the full-blown dystopia that Margaret Atwood envisioned, an America in which abortion is illegal and in vitro fertilization is also outlawed is not only a dystopian future, it's going to happen soon. And it's going to happen in the immediate future. It's all that Congress wants to do. Underneath all this talk about borders and taxes and whatnot, the Republican majority that now runs the country and is going to run the country for the rest of time hates women virulently, and so do all of their mega Christian shadowy donors. So Red Clocks, I think, is going to become an involuntary classic. But in addition to mentioning it, they mentioned 3 dystopian novels to read next. One is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin. The other is The Parable of the Sower by the great Octavia Butler. And the third is When She Woke by Hilary Jordan, which came out in 2011, and I don't remember it. I don't think I ever read it. So if one of you did, let me know if it's good enough to stand company with The Left Hand of Darkness. Anyway, so one of the must do's is a book to read. And then we move on to, what was the next thing I wanted to show you here? They do the future of television. They do a rundown of the Golden Globes. They do fashion. And then there's this long article about the cover story, which is, I guess, the Grateful Dead. Just a long expose about the Grateful Dead. But then the next big thing is a big onset feature about The Alienist, which is an upcoming adaptation. Who does this? TNT is doing an adaptation, a lavish adaptation of The Alienist by Caleb Carr, which is based on a book. So I wanted to point that out. They run through the cast. No mention in the cast of Theodore Roosevelt, but that's all right. He's not in the book, really, that much. You could remove him, but I wish they don't. I hope they. I haven't gone on IMDb and seen if they have an actor for Theodore Roosevelt, but I'd love it because the Alienist takes place when he was chief of police for New York City, and that Roosevelt is a great story. The story of when he was the police chief is a great story. I couldn't help but notice the stars Dakota Fanning, who I consider to be one of the greatest actresses alive today. But when we get to there are two characters in the book who are trailblazers because they're Jewish, and they faced systematic discrimination, and the main character, the alienist of the title, doesn't care at all. He cares about the kind of work they do. Doesn't care about whether or not you're a woman, doesn't care about whether or not you're Jewish, doesn't care about anything other than the work you do. But the little paragraph description here is, brainy brothers sidelined in the police force because of their Judaism, who bring fresh ideas to the group and frequently a dose of comic relief. Something about the tone of that, I don't know, something about the tone of that bugged me. But then we have, for movies, this is the Sundance must-see list. I guess the Sundance Film Festival is coming up. From January 18th to January 28th, I once more have not been invited. Not that I would go in a million years. But I wanted to mention this one because some of these, they list 10 things, and I think 3 or 4 of them are based on books. Including The Catcher Was a Spy and Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot, which was a really oddly touching memoir from I don't have it here. It's the new Gus Van Sant movie, and I don't remember when the book came out. It was a long time ago, but I remember thinking this is just going to be thinly disguised self-pity, but I thought the book was really good, and the trailer for the movie makes it look remarkable. So that's neat. But eventually, if we keep flipping, we are going to get to the book section, which is where we were the last time. We've got style. We've got how to do Super Bowl Sunday, dance moves, stuff like that for Super Bowl Sunday, which is, for those of you who are not in America, that's one particular day when you can be very glad you're not. it's football, American football madness. So not the rest of the world's football. Take the rest of the world's football and transform it with massive infusions of human growth hormone and gigantic amounts of head trauma, so that after 2 or 3 years in the game, most practitioners who are earning $10 million to $70 million a year can't count to 100. But we do what we do for the thrill of it. And this particular year's Super Bowl is some of the thrill has gone out of the Super Bowl because the end is already known. The National Football League, the NFL here in America, has for years been trying and failing to truly prosecute the greatest team in the league, the New England Patriots, for cheating. They cheat all the time. They have systematized cheating. They've brought it down to a science. And they are certainly going to star in the coming Super Bowl, and they're certainly going to win it, and they're going to win it by cheating. And it's just going to be a question of sports reporters a year or two from now beetling through the details to figure out which specific way they cheated. It's always different. But the title's not going to be taken away. There's not going to be any asterisk at all. So, there's the fun of the Super Bowl watch in America these days is the same as it used to be when the Dallas Cowboys were in ascendancy over the whole league and could do no wrong and were this media franchise and all of these stars. And also were renowned. Just rumors were up to their eyeballs that all they did was cheat. And then that whole period phased away. And now all of a sudden we have the Dallas Cowboys again. We have another team that is recognized by everyone as being evil. But it's not the New York Yankees. It's the New England Patriots, which is pretty tough. But the Super Bowl's on the magazine has a whole bunch. Everybody does this sort of lifestyle thing because Super Bowl Sunday, the day when the Super Bowl is played, has metamorphosed over time into this massive cultural thing that for a lot of people has very little to do with football. And that aspect of it is fun for me. I'm always interested to see the TV commercials, which have been a marquee spot for 35 years. What are you, if you're an ad agency or a brand of some kind, are you willing to pay the gross national product of a small country to get your ad shown during the Super Bowl? And people do. People line up to do. And some of the ads have gone on to become quite famous. But then finally, now that you're done with all of these highly objectionable, non-book related detours, we get to the book section. And of course, what's front and center? Michael Wolff's book, Fire and Fury, which is reviewed by Clark Collis. And he ends with, I want to read you 2 paragraphs because I reviewed this book for the National. And so I feel like I have a stake in the game. He gives it a B+ as a grade. And his last 2 paragraphs are, the publisher had reasons to be bullish. The publisher moved the publication date of the book forward when the president tried to get it squashed, when the president of the United States tried to gag the publication of a book for the first time in American history. The publisher not only ignored the warning, because a public figure doesn't get any more public than the President of the United States, they moved it forward and added to their print run. And they were right to do so. The book was still sold out everywhere. The publisher had reason to be bullish. Wolff, whose previous books included a 2008 biography of Rupert Murdoch, enjoyed what he described in his author's note as something like a superintendent position, or a semi-permanent position, on a couch in the West Wing, following Trump's inauguration, and conducted more than 200 interviews for the book. Still, Fire and Fury does not seem to be free from error. That's the understatement of the century. In particular, a story that Trump asked, "Who's that?" when it was suggested that he make John Boehner chief of staff, appears suspect given that Trump had played golf with the one-time House Speaker in 2013. Wolff's lasting achievement is not his headline-grabbing, but his enthralling, if also terrifying, way he depicts the arguably unqualified and definitely unprepared characters who wandered around the White House in 2017 and their near-bloodsport level conflicts. You really can't make this stuff up, although many readers will wish this could be filed under fiction. And of course, Entertainment Weekly doesn't use the word stuff. But the one quibble, it's a very good review, and it's a crunch of space. It's no more than 500 words. But the one quibble I want to make with that is that the fact that Trump would ask who John Boehner is when he played golf with him in 2013 seems to Clark Collis to be an obvious factual error, when that is absolutely not the case and has been verified over and over again. This is a guy who does not remember you, who hears your name and says, "Who's that?" who's been known to do it with people a lot closer to him than Speaker Boehner. So that part actually seems more trustworthy, not less trustworthy. But then after we get to that, after we get Fire and Fury, we move on to a whole page of cookbooks. And you can hear crickets. Because Steve has no interest in cookbooks, no interest in reading them except once in a blue moon when I read one that's really good, and certainly no interest in using them. But the books continue. But again, it's a Steve no go. It's 2 girls' books. They're not, girl is not in the title of either one of them, but this is all about, it's A.J. Finn's The Woman in the Window and The Wife Between Us by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. And I've read both books, and they don't have girl in the title, but they follow the girl book formula, which is for the girl in question, the main character, who's never a girl. She's always either a young woman or a fully grown woman. She's never a girl, and if you were to call her a girl to her face, or the living equivalent to her face, she would be deeply insulted and start a y'all hashtagged social media campaign to have you fired from your job, divorced from your current spouse, evicted from your current home, and then executed. All for that one word. All for using that one word. But as is the case with all of these books, they follow a template. And the template is that the girl in question, the main character in question, is hapless, disorganized, and mostly stupid. And the entire plot revolves around things she does that a person who isn't hapless, disorganized, and stupid wouldn't do, and as a result, the plot would never happen. But in these books it does, because the main character is not only the girl who, the girl in, the girl where, but also a moron and a mess. So the book's drama is driven by the fact, by what, I don't know why no one's called it. I really don't. I'm waiting for the backlash to this whole obscene fad. This fad that is now 700 books long. I'm waiting for someone to point out the deeply encoded condescension in these books. The condescension signals itself by the use of the word girl. But the condescension has its living and breathing essence in the fact that the main characters of these books don't deserve to be the main characters. They're a mess. They're not protagonists in the normal sense of the word. That whole sense of protagonist, these books almost always subvert it. In a way that I don't think is healthy at all. Anyway, the other book they mentioned, it's not just those two. It's also The Largesse of the Sea Maiden by the late Dennis Johnson, which is his latest and last collection of short stories. And they give it an A, of course, because you can't not give Dennis Johnson an A, especially since he croaked to do it. I read it and really liked it. I have a feeling that it will be one of those fiction books that grows on me. I have a feeling that I will read it a second time later in the year and like it much more. I certainly felt like the door was open. And that's you got the best new books as well, a whole stack of book notices from Entertainment Weekly. And the point I wanted to make about this, the larger point, and I'm going to move on because we've got another magazine to do, and it's the same point, is how saturated this entertainment magazine is with books. And we're going to see it again in the next magazine. I want to come back to that at the end. Of course, once you're done with the books, because this is, print magazines and you have to go after the highest bidder. What's the next 2 pages? Something called snus. Snus. It's not snuff. It's snus. So it's a tobacco product, of course. So it gives you cancer, and it gives you cancer promptly. And it gives you cancer 100% of the time. And it can't be quit. And it can't be mitigated. It's got 100 years of lawyer-protected bioengineering behind it. It's not people out in the fields picking the raw leaves of the tobacco plants and then, making them into product in a peaceful factory. No, there's men in lab coats from the very beginning with the seeds to the very end. And beyond the end, in the packaging, which the packaging itself has addictive material woven into it. And it's all attorney-client privilege. It's all work product privilege. None of it can be touched by the Federal Trade Commission or the health commissions, even if they had the manpower to do it or the money to do it, and they don't. Big Tobacco could outbid the government in a lawsuit, so it doesn't happen. But this, the ad makes sure to say it's not dip. It's snus. Dip is the tin can of ragweed tobacco. You take out a big pluck of it and you stick it in your mouth between your gum and your teeth. And when I was in college, I saw 18-year-old young men who could wobble their teeth back and forth because they've been doing this for years. But it's not that. The maker wants you to know it's something else. It's cleaner. There's no spitting. It's like a tab that you put between your lips and your teeth. It's suitable for the opera. Anyway, that's Entertainment Weekly. And then the next magazine we go to is Vanity Fair, the latest Vanity Fair, which the cover is Emily Blunt, and the reason she's on it is book-related. She is starring in what I think is going to be a ruinous update of Mary Poppins, which came from a book. But if we go into this and we start flipping through it, I promise I won't keep you long. We'll do this in double time here. When you flip through it, in no time at all, you start to get subjected, if that's the right word, to book talk. Like for instance, there we go. There's Darren Criss himself, the star of the assassination of Giovanni Versace. And this, unfortunately, is today's fashion. That is not comedy. That photo shoot is not comedy. This is a young man who's wearing a suit that's 2 sizes too small for him. He's wearing pants that are 3 sizes too small for him, and they're also misfitted because they come up to his sternum. He's wearing a buttoned shirt that's buttoned all the way to his Adam's apple, but he's not wearing a tie. And he's wearing shoes but no socks. So this, in any other decade of any other century, would have been considered a comedy routine. He would come on stage or in front of a camera this way in order to make you laugh. But in the 21st century, this is considered fashion. But he's in that movie, and the next thing you get is another one of those full page ads for the TV show, and also the celebrated Hot Type Fair, Vanity Fair's page of Hot Type. Once upon a time, this was a go-to thing for the book watching world. It was largely assumed that if a book is mentioned in Hot Type and Vanity Fair, it's gonna sell better, and it's gonna start to develop buzz. That Vanity Fair's mention is going to give it buzz. I don't know that that's true anymore. I think there are too many places like Vanity Fair now, so that might not hold true anymore. But I wanted to mention some of the books they mention. The first one they do is Feel Free by Zadie Smith, a collection of her essays that Sloane Crosley, or my own issues with Sloane Crosley, but she does a really good job with describing it. The essays are written largely during the Obama years, meaning these essays are delightfully uneclipsed by the orange storm cloud that currently looms over America. Instead, Smith is free to focus her incisive and often wry lens on painting, novels, dance, history, technology, Mark Zuckerberg, Jay-Z, race, love, and the nature of joy itself. But make no mistake, these pieces are as relevant as can be. They are reminders of how much else there is to ponder in the world, how much else is worth our time, and how lucky we are to have Smith as our guide. I wholeheartedly second all of that. It's a wonderful, wonderful collection of pieces. And then the next one they mention, the next one that Sloane Crosby mentions, is Thisbe Nissen's novel, Our Lady of the Plains, which is about a middle-aged woman who decides to reinvent her life with disastrous and funny and also touching consequences. And when I read that plot description, I thought, oh God, oh God, haven't we seen this so many times? And isn't it always just drip, drip, drip of syrup? But the book was wonderful. The book is absolutely wonderful. I can't remember, let's see here. This is the story of a long-married and long-suffering Midwestern mother who's hit with a political, emotional, and literal tornado. And I can't remember. I think it might be Thisbe Nissen's debut novel. Maybe not. No. In fact, I don't think it is. I'm drawing a blank now, but it is wonderful. Our Lady of the Plains is wonderful. You want a good, smart, non-weird fiction reading experience. This season is produced in 2018 is producing them. Our Lady of the Plains, Oliver Loving. These are books that you can just sit down with and enjoy. Postmodern, anti-postmodern. Then the next one they mentioned The Largesse of the Sea Maiden again by Dennis Johnson, and love it. And there's also a separate column here for Julia Samuels' book Good Grief, Grief Works, which is about grief in the 21st century and the taboos against it and the awkwardness around it. And I thought some of Grief Work was a little telegraphed, a little easy, but I thought the book itself was really good. If you're dealing with deep grief, then Julia Samuels' book Grief Works might give you a lot to think about. Of course, I was divorced from a lot of it because I come from a tradition and an upbringing, and I also believe myself that grief is so private a thing that you can't share it with anyone. You can't ask anyone to understand it or say the right things or help you. You just have to deal with it yourself. So that was the part of the book that bothered me the most, was the pathologizing of it in the way that the 21st century pathologizes everything, which is not that it's not a pathology, of course. Grief is like a sickness. But the way the 21st century pathologizes everything is not just to say that it's a sickness, but to say that it's everybody else's problem as well as yours. And that bugs me a lot. Because I'm starting to meet, through my boys, I'm starting to meet young people who have grown up with that mind frame. They don't know anything else. They've never known anything else, where their problems are everybody's problems. And I got to tell you, I'm glad my boys aren't like that, and it doesn't make for particularly enjoyable people to be around. For me, grief is a wound, and you treat it exactly like that. You don't go out and about if you're wounded. Your life doesn't go on as normal. You stop and wait until your wound starts to stitch together and heal, and you perfectly grateful for the, the expressions of sympathy, but you just have to wait for it to heal. Unless you're traumatizing over it, unless your grief has become something morbid, where you can't let it go, where it doesn't heal. And that does happen. Sometimes that does happen. And then those people might actually need help of some kind. But mostly, if you're emotionally even-keeled, grief is just a horrible, horrible wound. And it wounds you, and you're crippled, and then you heal. It's very plain. It's a very plain, ordinary experience. It happens all the time. But grief works. I wanted to sort of quasi-recommend it. There are large parts of it that are very smart. In the picture of Hot Type, in addition to Feel Free, there's also Say My Name by Allegra Houston, Neon in Daylight by Hermione Hobie, and Red Sky at Noon by Simon Sebag Montefiore. But then, as I mentioned, we get another full-page ad about the Gianni Versace thing, and then a little article that's actually by Maureen Orth, the author of Vulgar Favors, the book that the whole thing is based on. Then we move forward to the hoi polloi. Vanity Fair always has big picture spreads of parties, although in this one is LACMA's Primal Palm Garden, some sort of gala that was held in California. And I gotta tell you, the massive partying picture here, the thing that steals it for me is this guy. He's looking straight at the camera. And the look on his face is, don't judge me by this job. I'm going to rule this town. I love that. But, you go no further than one page. It's a full-page ad for the TV adaptation of Altered Carbon by Richard Morgan, which is a book, science fiction book, and a very good one. But imagine how expensive that is. How much money Netflix had to pay to get a full-page ad. Then you turn the page, one page. You've got another full-page ad for a book, Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. The publisher had to spring for a whole full-page color ad in Vanity Fair. That's not cheap. They have to have research that says that's worth it. The New York Times blurb for the book says, so surprising and moving and true that I became completely unstrung. One needn't be suffering like Aza, one of the main characters in the book, to identify with it. One need only be human. To which my first response was, Aza in the book is not portrayed as human. No reactions at all that are in any way like a human. Aza is portrayed like a character in a John Green novel. But anyway, then we get to an article on Trump's winery, and a long article on Emily Blunt, and another article on Harvey Weinstein. This is a different scandal. And Rose McGowan. But then eventually we get to Bacchanalia 2.0. Isn't that great? And this is an article that is an excerpt from a book by Emily Chang called Brotopia, about the dude bro mentality of Silicon Valley, which is really good. The book is really good. And this is a repurposed excerpt from that book. And it goes on for page after page after page. Then you get to Incredible Voyage, about a German in the 30s who got in his kayak and went on an extremely perilous, long ocean journey. And the article's fantastic. It's his hair, teeth, survival stories. But the article is by William Prochnow and Laura Parker, and I would be willing to bet, I didn't research before this video, but I'd be willing to bet this is a chunk from a forthcoming book. It just feels that way. But even if it's not, so we'll just skip along, because we have a couple of other examples here. Oh, this was so good. That is Mecca, for those of you who don't recognize it. This is William Langewiesche in 2015. There was a massive stampede of pilgrims at Mecca, and a lot of people died. Thousands of people died. And he does what I think is the first long article, certainly the first long article that I've read about it, in which he accuses the Saudi government of he accuses all of the powers that be connected with the whole thing of covering it up. And but okay, here we go. Here's the last example, and this whole tedious death march of magazine talk will be over. Here's an article called Wonder Boys, that is of course, you'll recognize West Side Story. And this is an article about Leonard Bernstein and Jerome Robbins, and their partnership that eventually led to Wonder Boys. And it's by Laura Jacobs, and it is a repurposed excerpt from a book of hers on ballet called Celestial Bodies, which is due in a month, I think, or 2 months, and which is really good. So that's what this comes from. And I just had to, just for personal reasons, I had to show you this picture. When West Side Story was revived in 1980, the cast all got together. There's Lenny Bernstein as an older man, and there are all of the fresh young faces. That is a great picture on its own, and one of those faces, one of those faces is known to me quite well. And there you have it. So that is Vanity Fair, and that is Entertainment Weekly. And the larger point I wanted to make is that books saturate both these things. And the more you think about it, the more you realize books saturate a lot, not just magazines. They're everywhere. Everything is a book adaptation. Books are a conversation subject du jour. I love it. I wasn't expecting to get hit over the head with that when I looked at these two entertainment magazines, but I look at them and books are utterly inescapable. So I think there might be signs that under the surface, the book culture might be a little healthier than we all like to think, which would be really encouraging. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this hideously long video up, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.